background. Originally from America. Grew up in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, which is right outside New York City. And then when I was 18, I went on a gap year to Israel to a place called Mevaseret Zion. Stayed there for about 8 years, got married, had a family. Then went back to America for 10 years. I lived in a small neighborhood outside of within Los Angeles called Beverly Hills. Sometimes people have heard of it. I was a rabbi there for 8 years in a synagogue there. And then moved to Boca Raton, Florida, where I was a rabbi in a synagogue in Boca Raton and taught in a high school in Miami. And then 6 years ago, I moved to this wonderful town called Mitzpeh, which is right outside of Jericho, between Jerusalem and Jericho. It's about 20 minutes to Jerusalem, 10 minutes to Jericho. It's on the way to the Dead Sea. If you've ever gone from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea, which I assume almost all of you have, so then you've passed my town. It's right there on the left side on the main highway. We are proud residents of Mitzpeh to the extent that my wife is on her second term as mayor of Mitzpeh. And I'm primarily an educator. I teach high school and college students, but I also am an activist for Judea and Samaria, for Israel. I do a lot of lobbying through AIPAC. I don't work for AIPAC, but I'm a proud AIPAC member. So I speak to many people in the American government, in the White House, in the Senate, and Congress about issues pertaining to Israel and especially now Judea and Samaria. And that's really, that's my story. I have 6 children, 6 wonderful children. My oldest is 20. She goes to university at Bar Ilan, and my youngest is an 11-year-old boy in 5th grade here in Mitzpeh. And I have 2 college students that are my children. So that's it. And this is what I do. So, and I'm proud to do it. So I figured what I would do is I would start off by making a couple of comments, some things that I think are important for people to know about settlers and about people that live in this region. And then I'd open up for questions. I think questions are the most important. I know we're all on different hours, so I have until the 45-minute mark because then I host a TV show that I just started, so online. So I have to get prepped for that. That starts at the 0 point for the next hour. So start off with a couple of things, and if you have questions, I don't know what the normal format for this is, but if you have questions, and you think that they're important to ask in the middle, so I have no problem if you interrupt me. These are not like points that I feel you must know, and if I don't get through them, so then that'll be a problem. So even if right in the beginning you say, wait a minute, that's not true. Hold on a second, let's stop him, he's lying. So that's fine. And please feel free to disagree with anything I say. What I say is factual, but also my perspective. So I have no problem if you disagree with me. I'm not looking for a debate tonight, that's for sure not. But I am looking to help people understand at least the perspective of many of us that live out here. Okay, so first of all, I firmly maintain that the Jewish people have every right to govern and to live in Judea and Samaria, a lot of people in the world call the West Bank. So in that area, I am a firm believer in the fact that the Jewish people should be the ones governing this entire area and living in this entire area. So that's starting off. That's my position, and obviously I live here, so it would be kind of hypocritical if I felt otherwise. So that's my starting point right there. I'm a Zionist, and I'm proud of that, and I believe that the Zionist movement was designed for Jews to settle the land of Israel, Eretz Israel. I believe that that's a mitzvah. I'm an Orthodox rabbi, so I'm governed by the laws of the Torah by choice. And I feel very strongly that it's a duty of all Jews to settle this land and to make sure that this land is settled. And I don't draw a distinction with the green line as to where that land is. That line, as much as the map in my own house behind me has a distinction between Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and the rest of Israel, it's all Eretz Israel, and it's all our mitzvah to settle it. I believe that in 1948, we were robbed of a lot of our land by the partition plan. I think Ben Gurion made a correct decision to accept what he could get and take that. But I think that in 1967, we corrected a great injustice of our land being taken from us. It was a compromise that we made, and that's okay. But I feel that in 1967, we corrected that great injustice by taking back and having the opportunity to resettle much of Eretz Yisrael, which was the Zionist dream. So that's another belief I have. When I got to, and this might disturb some people, when I got to when I moved here, in the middle of Operation Protective Edge in 2014. So we came in the middle of a war, and I believe that it was still important to come, even though we were in the midst of a war, because this is home, and home is always where you're safest. So I felt that this was a good move strategically for me to be here. When I got here, I thought that I could play a strong role in creating peace between the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs that lived here. I felt strongly that the politicians are never going to be able to make the deal here. I don't think that I still believe that politicians are never going to be able to sign a peace deal between our two people. And I felt that it's a grassroots effort that has to happen. And I felt that by the fact that we're the ones in power, it was our responsibility for the average Israeli that lives here to reach out to Palestinians, demonstrate that we are interested in peace, and demonstrate that we are interested in bettering their lives. And I still feel that that's true, that it's our responsibility. And I had a great deal of ideas of how to do this. Unfortunately, my position has evolved since being here, since seeing the facts on the ground, and gaining and losing just about all the relationships I had with Palestinian Arabs over disappointment. I feel that Palestinian Arabs are only interested in creating friendly relationships, and this is from experience. Again, I haven't done polling, and I'm not an expert. From my own experience, all Palestinians that I've befriended and developed relationships with, those relationships at a certain point have ended when they've realized that I'm not one of the people that are willing to secede our land in order to create a Palestinian state, and I'm not an advocate for their nationalist goals. Once they've realized that, I've quickly lost not just about every single Palestinian friend that I made, and a lot of them were confused by the fact that I was interested in improving their lives, interested in bringing them into our country and into our nation, but not to create a Palestinian state. I don't think they understand that. I think they see that as racist and sort of colonial mindset, and everything that they're battling against. So after a couple of years of trying that and failing, superbly failing, like I've never failed at anything before in my life. So I started to realize maybe the problem's not with me, and it's not my social distancing that's the issue here, but rather the inability of the Palestinian people to come to the understanding that we're not going anywhere, that we're not leaving. This has been 52 years, 72 years in the larger Israel, and we're gonna be here, and we're not gonna go anywhere. So I think that once they realize that, then they can't come to that realization. They're not there. They haven't been taught that. They've been trained their entire lives to know that one day we're going to leave, that one day this horrible nightmare, this catastrophe that's occurred to them will end. And they're told that over and over and over again. And because of that, it's very hard for them to change positions, to become accustomed to the fact that we're going to be here, and they better get used to it. My position has evolved now, where I think that what would be better for everybody is if the state of Israel annexed the entire Judea and Samaria, the entire West Bank, and then once we did that, I think that it's important that we create a pathway to citizenship for Palestinian Arabs. What that looks like, I haven't exactly figured out, and the good news is I don't have to, because that's not my job. But I feel that we should create that pathway to citizenship with full rights to however many Palestinians want it, with the full knowledge and awareness that most of them will turn it down. So those are my core beliefs about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I just want to say one thing, that everybody hates being told like what to think and what positions to take. And I feel that a good way of alienating everybody on this phone call would be to start off that way. So I'll tell you that this is like my way of social distancing, because since you're not here, I can't really distance away from you. So I feel this would be the best way of doing it, is by telling you what way that you should think. I think you should caution yourselves that if you're not here, to really hesitate before maintaining and creating a position on what should happen in this land. I think that that's equally true of people in Georgia and New York, and also in Tel Aviv and Herzliya. I don't think that I think that people need to experience what life is like here before they begin to make decisions for people that live here, or even advocate a certain position of people that should be here. I think that that's really true, and I only say that because I worked for 10 years while I was in America as an advocate for Israel, and again in the White House in the highest positions, and I was and am very successful at that. And even though I was pretty sure of all my opinions, they drastically changed once I got a feel for the place, and changed even more once my wife took on a leadership position, and I was then brought in on many decisions and many issues, especially security related, that even the average person in Yehuda v'Shomron, in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, whatever term you like to call it, aren't aware of, that I wasn't aware of my first couple of years here. And just give you an example, for almost every night for the past week, we've had, and our yeshuv where I live in Mitzvah Yericho is like one of the safest places in Israel. Forget about like Judea and Samaria, in Israel. There's 42 years we've never had a successful attack, and yet every single week Palestinians try to infiltrate our yeshuv. And a week ago, last Thursday night, we were woken up by air raid sirens, which I was obviously convinced was a mistake because we don't have rockets here. We're on the opposite side of the country. And my wife told me, it's not a mistake, go get your gun and get ready. And there were two Palestinians who had infiltrated our yeshuv and were not found. So we had no idea where they were, and our security teams were out searching for them. And for 2.5 hours, we stayed up and locked our doors and turned on the lights outside, turned off the lights inside. And for the first time, I had to draw my gun and protect my family, which is something that I'd rather not ever do again. So that's, and then again on Saturday night, they tried to infiltrate again. We caught them way before they got in here. But that's a regular occurrence in one of the safest yeshuvim, one of the safest town settlements that you have in Israel. So just imagine what it's like in some of the dangerous places, right? Some of the places that your parents probably don't want you going to. So that's those type of tidbits that none of this made the news, by the way. The only place you'll read about this is like a blog post I wrote for Times of Israel. If it wasn't for me writing about it, no one would ever know that happened. And there are tons of these instances that occur all the time on a regular, frequent basis. So knowing that and being aware of that, I would just throw some caution to before you decide fully on what your positions are here. Okay, so I've spoken for a long enough amount of time. I see that somebody wrote here, it was at some point, how much would you annex and would you allow the Arabs to vote? If so, here we go. We'll never be able to form a coalition government. Au contraire, my friend, because we just did it with people that we thought we couldn't do at all. Also, how do you think Israel should care about what the UN has to say? So this is a question I got. I'm not just making this up and talking to myself. This is somebody wrote to me privately on the chat here. So I don't know if he wants me to say his name, so I'm not going to. But so I'll tell you, how much would I like to annex? I'd like to annex 100% of it. We're not going to. We're going to annex about 30% of it, hopefully next week. I had a meeting this as soon as the government, this whole mishugas that's occurring right now was announced. So I immediately called somebody I know on the mapping committee and said, okay, let's start Sunday. Let's get to work. We could do this by next week. Let's get this done before Pesach and make sure we annex the 30% before Pesach. So, but we're not going to. I would like to annex it all. Would I allow the Arabs to vote? I would allow the Arabs to vote. And I think that this whole idea of a demographic threat that we would lose the majority of Israel, and how could we be a democracy and a majority? I think it's all nonsense. There are 350,000 Palestinian Arabs that live in Jerusalem, in the borders of municipal Jerusalem, who have right to citizenship and have never gone ahead and taken it because the Arabs don't believe in normalization with Israel. So on principle they don't, and also their imams have told them. Imam is, for those that aren't aware, are a Muslim clergyman. So the imams have told them that it's haram, which means it's forbidden for them to have citizenship with Israel. So I don't believe that you're going to have a mad rush to citizenship. We're not going to get. I don't believe that it's the right thing to do is just give out citizenship. I think people have to apply for citizenship, and there has to be some sort of pathway. And like I mentioned before, I have no idea what the metrics of that would look like. I would have to really think that through. And again, not my job, so I don't really care what it would look like right now. And also, how do you think that Israel should care about what the United Nations has to say? No, Israel, as long as there is a supportive president of the United States who is willing to exercise the veto in the United Nations Security Council, I don't think we should care about what the United Nations has to say. The minute that's not true, then we've got a lot to worry about, because then you could have sanctions and things like that. The next question, by the way, people can just say the questions, they don't have to type them. What makes the Jewish claim to the West Bank more valid than the Palestinians? It's an excellent question that is asked. What makes the Jewish claim? So I think there's three things that make our Jewish claim. There's a historical, and I'm not going to go through the nitty gritty of international law and everything, but I think historically we have a greater right to it. As an Orthodox Jew, I believe that God gave us the land. Obviously, that's not going to hold too much weight in a court, but there's never going to be a court. I think it's very important to recognize the fact that, I'm giving a talk about this later in the night, about how this imaginary debate that we're going to have somewhere, whether it be on the college campus or in some court or on an internet forum, that we're going to debate who has a greater claim to the West Bank or the Judeans, us the Palestinians. I think it's academic, and I'm not talking to college students. So academics are important. Don't get me wrong, but I think that when it comes to a debate and who has a greater claim, it doesn't matter. We're all here. We're all here. The positions are already taken. We're not leaving. We're not going to give up our control. We believe it's ours, and that's it. And the Palestinians believe it's theirs, and we're not leaving. The Palestinians aren't leaving. So instead of deciding who has a greater claim and who should be here and who shouldn't be here, let's figure out a way that we can move forward in a very pragmatic way that can improve everybody's life and make everybody happy to a certain extent. Obviously, not everybody's going to be happy. So I think that's what we should do. And the best way of doing that would not be unilateral moves like annexation. The best way of doing that would be having negotiations and sitting down with the Palestinians and saying, okay, what do you want? Let's make this happen. What would you like? Tell us what you would like. And if the answer is we want it all, then our answer is going to be we've offered that to you in the past and you've turned it down. So those days are over now. And as time goes on, you're going to lose more and more land if you don't start helping. So I'm not one of these people that sits down and has these discussions. I teach these discussions, and I hate it because it gets us nowhere. I think that deciding who has a greater claim and just creates greater division. Let's get past that, and let's really work on improving people's lives. That's my view. So sorry if that's disappointing, if I'm not going to give you all the talking points of why Jews
not at all.
A greater claim.
Hi, Rabbi. Thanks for the talk. I was want to ask the question. I just wanted to follow up with another quick question because I have to go soon. I have a class. But I was wondering what the political and / municipal structure of the settlements is. So you said that your wife is the mayor of the settlement. So is there a structure? Like, what's the hierarchy? How does it relate to the federal government or to the central government, etc.?
It's an excellent question. So in Israel, you have yeshuvim, and this all goes by population size. Okay, so it's all governed by how big and how when I say big, not land size, but how many people you have living. So you can be a yeshuv or a moshav, depending on where you are in the country. It's a very small place. There's something small, I don't know what it is, but you could be a yeshuv or moshav. The next step up is you're a moetzah, which is like the equivalent of a county almost, but certain cities in Israel are their own moetzot. So for instance, Ma'ale Adumim is essentially a city, but it's considered a moetzah. It's considered like a county. It's called a regional council. So they have their own. That's the next step, and then after that is the federal government. So we are part of 21 different yeshuvim, different settlements within the larger Binyamin Regional Council. We're on the very edge of Binyamin. Binyamin goes from us all the way out to Modi'in, Israel, which is like a tremendous feat. It's the largest one and encompasses the most amount of people, even greater than places like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. We have our regional council is more, and there's a head of the regional council. His name is Yisrael Gantz. You'll hear about him in about 10, 15 years. He'll make moves to enter the Knesset, maybe sooner, who knows? It could be next week the way things are going here. But that's the structure, and so we very much we deal more with our regional council than we do with the Knesset on a federal level. So if it comes to funding projects or things like that we want money for, that's who we go to, and we pay taxes. We, being the residents of Mitzvah Yericho, pay taxes to our town, to the regional council, and to the federal government. We get to pay to everybody, but we also get services from everybody. So that's how it works.
So wait, what's the tax rate, if you don't mind me asking? Because that sounds like it's pretty high.
It's incredibly high. And we could go on. Oh, I got a lot to say about that. It's incredibly high. On the other hand, also keep in mind that we have like a great army that protects us. Free healthcare, free education. I don't want to, I feel like I should make you feel bad because you brought up my tax rate. I should bring up my tuition rate and tell you how much less.
Yeah, you have a good point.
Right. So so I should tell you, like, my daughter pays about $2,000 a year to go to Bar Ilan. So, and that's a full university with a degree that's going to be just as valuable to yours when you move to Israel. So but she'll be like $200,000 ahead of you. So that's or I will be at least more ahead of your parents, depending on how your financial structure works. But so in that sense, I pay a ton in taxes, but I also get a ton. In America, I was paying a tremendous amount in healthcare, even though my employer paid for half of it. So now I pay very little for healthcare, and my tuition bill, I was paying somewhere close to $100,000 in day school tuition in America, and now I pay about $150 a month.
Okay, sounds good. I have to go. Thank you for the call, and good luck to everyone else in keeping these conversations going. See you.
Great. Okay. You got me for another 15 minutes. So who's got questions? No one has. That's great. Also.
What are your thoughts on the Trump peace plan?
The Trump peace plan. So I worked very hard on the Trump peace plan, and it's very much in favor of the Trump peace plan. I think it's great, but I think it's great because it favors us tremendously. Let's not kid ourselves, right? Like we definitely got the better end of the deal here on the Trump peace plan. But I think the greatest thing to focus on the Trump peace plan, a lot of people get carried away with the map and how much this side gets and how much that side gets, and that's important. Don't get me wrong, I'm not brushing that off, but I think it's also important to focus on the idea that the Trump peace plan was different than any other suggested peace plan by previous administrations. Every other administration said, here's the done deal. This is what we think should happen, and this is what we think you should do. Some administrations didn't just say, this is what we think you should do. Some administrations said, this is what you are going to do because we give you so much money and you better do this, and forced it and were prescriptive towards us. That's not the Trump peace plan. The Trump peace plan is, listen, we're a bunch of novices at this. They were very clear. Jason Greenblatt and David Friedman Berkowitz were Avi Berkowitz was very clear when they started off with this, and Jared Kushner, that they are not experts. They are not the experts. And they said, though, also at the same time, that the experts in this, the Dennis Rosses and the Martin Indyks and the John Kerrys have been working on the same exact plans for 30 years, and all we've seen is more and more violence stem from it. So on the one hand, they were not experts. On the other hand, they weren't, just because of the fact that they didn't have any expertise doesn't mean anything in terms of their likelihood of success. So that being said, this was a opening. Look, we don't know anything. We know very little. We're going to study this for about a year and a half. We're going to come up with a suggestion. If you accept the suggestion, then great. If you would like to talk about it, then great. And this is an opening idea of what we think. And none of this is set in stone. So any of this can be changed. It's just a question of whether you're going to participate. The Israelis said yes right away, and the Palestinians didn't even respond. So I think the most important thing when you're talking about the Trump plan is to realize it's not a done deal. It's not a take it or leave it deal at all. It's exactly the opposite of that. This is the opening part of a conversation that we should have and the opening part of negotiations. Unfortunately, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And I think they're making the greatest strategic mistake of their lives, because I think that President Trump would do anything for this deal. I think that if he could put down in the record books, especially before re-election, that he has solved the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think if I was Mahmoud Abbas's advisor, I would say to him, I'd say, go to President Trump immediately and say to him, you're amazing. I want you negotiating this deal. Here are the 10 things that I want. I'm pretty sure the Palestinians would get all 10 things. As they can make ludicrous claims, and I think that the president would get it done, because he would see this prize in front of him of being able to solve something that no other president has ever been able to do. Unfortunately, they don't realize that. They're trying to hold out for the next president, and the next president, whoever this is going to be, it's either going to be the exact same thing as the Trump administration, or we're going to revert back to the Obama administration, or the Bush administration, or the Clinton administration, and everybody before that, and just get the same type of stuff, which is going to go nowhere. So those are my feelings on the Trump peace plan. But I think it's mostly dead in the water. Someone asked me how I would deal with Gaza. Gaza's a done deal. There's nothing we could do about Gaza anymore. We're not going to have anything to do with Gaza anymore. There's no way we could ever send soldiers into Gaza anymore. It's a death trap. They've literally, unfortunately, a lot of them have dug their own graves by putting Hamas in charge. I think it's the international community's responsibility right now to step in and solve Gaza. I don't know how they do it, but I think that the international community, if they were really concerned, would come in and take over from Hamas. And I think that if they were able to create some sort of civilized society there that worked in a normally functioning manner, I think that Israel would be much easier on the borders and allow a lot more to happen there. This is amazing that I've never had like so few questions. This is like incredible. I've like spoken in colleges all across America, and I'm usually either attacked on the left that I'm too like extreme and right wing, or I'm attacked on the right as being too left wing.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you share your thoughts on what the BDS movement in America, and what is like your perspective on that?
On the BDS movement? I love the BDS movement. I'll tell you why. It's like the greatest failure ever. About 6 minutes away from my house is an industrial area called Mishor Adumim, where 5,000 Israelis and Palestinians work together peacefully. There's only been one terror attack there in 25 years, and it was a 16-year-old kid that walked into the supermarket there, took a knife off the shelf, stabbed somebody, my neighbor, and then the next person he went after happened to be one of Prime Minister Netanyahu's Shabak bodyguards on his day off, and we can all imagine how that ended. So that was the end of the attack. So that was the only attack that there ever was there. It's an oasis of peace, and the only time that BDS has ever been successful was when they boycotted SodaStream, which was found there, and was open there and successfully was there, because the owners of SodaStream are idealists and felt that they should open up specifically in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, so that they could have Palestinian workers there and give them good jobs and good wages, which I thought was an amazing move. And they had 400 Palestinians there. Then BDS, in really their only success that they've ever had, was able to get SodaStream to have to move out into the Negev, which just got 400 Palestinians fired. And then SodaStream was sold to Pepsi for $4.3 billion, and all of their workers got a bonus, which has never happened in Israel before that, and an exit. The workers on the line got, because the owners are idealists, so they felt that they should give bonuses to everybody based on the exit. So everybody got, except for the 400 Palestinians that they had fired 2 years before, because they were forced to move because of the BDS movement. So when I meet people from BDS, I simply ask them, I say, listen, I know how I improve Palestinians' lives. Can you point to one Palestinian that you've helped? Like, I hire Palestinians all the time. They work in my yeshuv, they come in. So tell me, I know how I'm helping them. So tell me how you help Palestinians. It's been like 25 years you guys have been at this. What have you done? I was also in the Airbnb whole thing that happened. I was one of the 5 plaintiffs that sued Airbnb, and we settled and one of the points of the settlement, the only point that I'm allowed to talk about, is that they changed their policy. So even those are the 2 successes that they've had. And after Airbnb, there's not going to be one corporation that's going to try that again. Like there's no corporation that will ever go through what Airbnb went through after that. Okay, so let's see here. I've got a couple more questions here. What will happen to the Palestinian Authority after Mahmoud Abbas dies? Why do you think the world takes him seriously as a peacemaker? Okay, so I have no idea what happens after he dies. No one knows that answer, including the Palestinians. It's going to be a free-for-all, which will either be decided by violence, or it'll be some sort of peaceful transfer. No one knows. No one has any idea. There's no heir apparent. There's nobody that's waiting in the wings. And there's 5 people. Sorry. Okay. So no one knows. I have no idea what will happen. And anybody that tells you they think they know what will happen, don't listen to them. And why does the world take him seriously as a peacemaker? Because they don't have a choice. The world doesn't have a choice. If they come to the conclusion that he's not a peacemaker, then what do you do with the Palestinians? What do you do? That's their leader. So you're just going to write him off? They can't do that. So you have to take him seriously. But they don't really take him seriously anymore. When was the last time you saw a picture of Mahmoud Abbas with the world leader? Right? During the Holocaust, the commemoration of Auschwitz, so I think that Prince Charles went out there and Putin went out there. I have no idea what Putin was doing there. That was probably just a shot at across the bow, Bibi. But that's that's it. No one takes him seriously anymore. He's a lame duck. And as an Orthodox Jew, how would you deal with Jews who are themselves against the Jewish claim to Israel? No, that's not true. Well, Jews, just other Jews, okay. What do you think of organizations like Jewish Place for Peace, or if not now? They're jokes, these organizations. They're just jokes. They don't do anything. They're just loud on social media. They don't accomplish anything. Name one thing they've accomplished. Let them keep doing this. Who cares? They're not moving the needle on any sort of opinion basis or anything. Go look on, if not now's, social media pages, and find a picture of any event that they've ever held with more than 10 people there that they haven't partnered with another organization. There's no one that's a part of them. They just have a loud social media voice. They're not influencing anybody's decisions. They're not. Everybody thinks that progressives are being moved by them. They're not being moved by them. No one's being moved by them. It's just not true. Nobody cares enough to really do anything. Yes, if you poll a bunch of college students and say, what do you think about this issue? Then they're going to say, I side with the Palestinians. But if you ask the average progressive, what are the issues that you care about? Israeli-Palestinian conflict's not going to get anywhere near the top of that list. So it doesn't really matter. These people are not invested. You just saw this with this World Zionist Congress election, right? So according to the numbers of what everybody's scared of, the right wing should have lost 90-10 in this election. They didn't. They got a slightly over the majority, which doesn't make any sense mathematically until you realize the fact that the people that are against Israel on these types of forums and on social media and in the polls, this is not their issue. They just don't care. No one really cares except for the people that are invested. So they don't care. So I don't take them seriously because I'm very pragmatic and I don't think they're going to do anything. Okay, now of course we got 3 minutes. Now all the questions are piling in. Okay, why do I call myself a settler? Because that's what everybody knows me as. I don't really care about this stuff. I say West Bank. I use all the bad words. And Frank Luntz would kill me for doing it. Guys, let me explain something to you, okay? If you say Judean Samaritan, you refuse to say West Bank, and you refuse to say Palestinians, instead you say Arabs that live here, and you don't call settlers, but you call, it's not going to change anything, okay? No one's going to be like, oh my God, he said West Bank. I guess there is no place called Judean Samaria. That's it, forget it. The Jews should leave. It doesn't, these words mean nothing. I'm sorry. I know that there's tons of Israeli advocacy classes and everybody says you got to use the right terminology. I could care less. I once had a boss that reamed me for using the word Palestinians. And I looked at her, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is what we're going to be talking about? That the fact that I said the word Palestinians, they're here. They're not going, there's 2 million of them that are my neighbors. If I don't say Palestinians, they're not going to disappear. Like, they're still going to be here the next day. So I understand, like, nowadays, and I'm sorry if this is going to be offensive to anybody, but like nowadays you have people that biologically are one gender who say they're another gender, and we respect that, right? We respect that, which a lot of people don't respect. But we as a society have decided, right? Most of us have come along and decided, if you want to call yourself a different gender, then we're going to respect that. But like a whole people that call themselves Palestinians, we're going to be like, no, you're not. Like, no, that's not going to happen. It's not the way the world works anymore. So, like, if they want to call themselves Palestinians, they want to call themselves Saudis, they want to call themselves Syrians, and call themselves whatever they want. So whatever they decide they want to call themselves, I'll call them that. And you want to call me a settler? So that's great. The Torah says that you should settle the land. I'm a settler. That's what I do. It's my mitzvah, right? That's I love it. I'm a settler. I put like no stock in these things. Okay. Have you had a lot of interaction with very leftist Jewish Israelis in the political sphere? How a lot of those conversations, how have a lot of those conversations gone? Are they willing to listen to your story and opinions? Yeah, the people that I speak to, by definition, are willing to listen to me, or else I wouldn't be having a conversation with them. And the same thing the other way. I have a lot of really close friends that are incredibly left-wing, that think I should be out of here, and think that I'm an impediment to peace, an impediment for Jewish people to go forward. And we're still friends, because you can be friends with people that you disagree with. I spoke to J Street this past summer. They had like their first and probably last trip that they took for college students to Israel. And I spoke to that group for about 2-3 hours. And I said to them, I said, listen, they asked me like why I thought it was so important to speak to them. And I said, listen, like we agree on 90% of the issues. It's just 10%. So you can focus on the 10% for like ever, and like always highlight and expand the differences. Or we can start talking about the things that we agree on. Let's focus on those things. Why do we always have to focus on the contentious things? Right, so that's what I think. Okay, there's no way we're gonna. What do you say when people say Israelis oppress, violate human rights of the Palestinians at checkpoints? Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Okay, that's a great question. So I say very simple: go look. I have a thing where I take people across the American students. I take them across the green line, and the first stop we make is last year I took 1,000 students, and not at one time. And we went and I take you to checkpoints. The first thing I do, and I said, okay, let's wait here. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait on the side. You have questions, you come over and talk to me. We'll wait here on the side until you get a proper perspective on what goes on here, and you feel comfortable that you can walk away saying there's no abuse. There is no abuse at the checkpoints. So, like, to say, what do I say when people say that? I say, most of the time people tell me that there's abuse at the checkpoints. I say, have you gone to a checkpoint? Have you seen a checkpoint? And have you seen abuse at the checkpoint? The answer to all three of those is 90% of the time, no. Okay? The answer to the first two is sometimes yes, and the answer to the last one is no. But I'm going to end with this, because I think it's important for you to realize. I'm going to say it really fast so I have enough time to say it. It's really important to recognize where Palestinians are coming from. Different than our culture, dignity is the most important thing to Palestinians. There is nothing more important than dignity to a Palestinian, to any Arab. Being forced to go through security checkpoints from Israeli soldiers, through Zionists who they feel have stolen their land, is the greatest way to demean their dignity. Now, I think it's 100% necessary, and we have to do it. And I think that's important for us to do it in the right way, in a way that tries to at least give them as much respect as possible. And I think we do a phenomenal job at it. I think there's room for improvement, but I think we do a phenomenal job at it. So any Palestinian that goes through a checkpoint, or their friends that are watching a checkpoint, by definition, are going to say this is wrong because of their perspective and where they're coming from. We have to recognize that. And if you talk to somebody about the checkpoints, the first thing you have to do is empathize with them and say, listen, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I understand. I really do. I understand. I would not like it if I had to go through a Palestinian checkpoint. I wouldn't like it at all. It doesn't mean that it's abusive. It doesn't mean that that's abuse. It means that it's bad for you. I get that 100%. But that doesn't not mean that it's abuse. So that's how I talk about that. But I think that the first and most important step that you have to have when talking about that about the checkpoints and anything security related and anything in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is empathy with the Palestinian people and where they're coming from and how they believe their situation is unfolding for them. Once you can get that point, then we can move on to the next point. Hopefully, I hope. Okay. Ellie, thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the excellent questions here. I'm on social media somewhat. Sometimes I check in. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rational Settler. Should be pretty easy to remember. And my name on Facebook. And I'm the only Uri Pilichowski in the entire world right now. So that's so you can find me fairly easily, and feel free to reach out and contact me and be in touch with me. I use my social media to educate. So I think that if you hated what I said, you'll really like it, and if you liked what I said, you'll enjoy it. And I think you can definitely be in touch. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a very good night. Stay healthy, stay safe, and come visit when you're in Israel.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Our next Zoom event is on Tuesday with Rabbi Development on the elections, so that's going to be a good one too. Have a great day.